everyone, welcome back to Frame of Mind. If you're new here, I invite you to like and subscribe to stay up to date for all the latest videos and awesome interviews. One of my favorite ways to move and exercise is yoga, especially now with being home so much. Yoga is a great way to open up my body, connect with breath and movement, and it can be restorative and healing and just a great workout. So this week I talked to Cara Provenzano, who's a yoga and fitness instructor in Los Angeles. Back in 2011, Cara found herself in Mumbai, India, working in the entertainment industry. She developed a connection with India, and she knew that one day she would be back. In 2013, she made the decision to pursue her teacher training and completed her first 200-hour certification in Ubud, Bali. She then decided it was time to go back to India and completed her 500-hour Ashtanga certification on the beautiful beaches of Goa. Cara has 15 years of practice in a variety of yoga disciplines like Yin, Ashtanga, Vinyasa, and Restorative, to name a few. Cara has led numerous yoga retreats in amazing locations like Peru, Portugal, Egypt, and Mexico. So if you've ever thought of doing your yoga teacher training abroad, keep watching to hear Cara's experience. Thank you for agreeing to talk.
I love it. I love it. This is a topic, like I said, I could talk forever on.
Well, tell me first how you got introduced to yoga and when and why you even decided to pursue teacher training.
That's actually a funny question because it's a very strange story.
Mm-hmm.
But I went to, I mean, I had been doing yoga little bits here and there when I lived in New York. And then when I moved out to LA, obviously everybody's here, trying to be healthy and fit and find the thing that works best for them. And I had a yoga studio right down the street from my house. So I would go there a couple times a week, right? But I was not a yogi. I was not somebody you would consider to be a yogi, especially my lifestyle, because I was like always out and I was new to town, I was just constantly doing crazy stuff. I liked the yoga community. It never really dawned on me that I was going to be a yoga teacher. And I had an opportunity to move to Mumbai back in 2011 for a job, actually. There was an agency out here in Los Angeles that I had worked for about the year that I had been here. And they had sent me on really interesting jobs. So I trusted them and I thought, okay, well, I love to travel, so you can't go wrong here. So I picked up and left. And I just thought that I was on a 6-month work visa. I was going to be working in Bollywood and working in the nightclub scene out there. They really were looking for Westerners in general, girls who had worked bottle waitressing and bartending throughout Vegas, Los Angeles, Miami, and New York. And I had pretty much experienced through all of those. So I was like, I'm going. And so I dropped everything and I went. And it was nothing like I thought it was going to be, actually. I wanted to take advantage of the fact that I was there and be able to really travel, like go see the mountains and do some of the spiritual stuff and take the trains and just get a lot of fun photos and meet people, right? When I got there, the contract, basically whoever was running the agency over there felt so responsible for anybody who came in that they didn't feel comfortable with any of us leaving the house. So we would go to work or we would go on auditions or go to castings, and then we would have a watchman outside of our apartment, right? And I mean, for the first month I was there alone because the rest of the girls had California consulates, I think. And because I still hadn't really switched anything over yet, my consulate was still based in New York and I was approved, but none of the other girls here were. So I went and I didn't find out until I landed in Mumbai that no one else was coming. And so they have to now find other people to come. So yeah, it was insane. And I'm like, oh my God, now I'm by myself. Luckily, everybody spoke the language. It wasn't like that. But I mean, it was still like fish out of water. I had no idea what I was supposed to expect. And then finally, after about 30 some odd days, a bunch of girls from South Africa came in and they joined me. And thank God, they were incredible. But all of us together, we all felt like we were prisoners in this apartment and we couldn't leave other than going on job auditions and castings or fittings. And so finally we just started to go to the gym, Lena Mogray, I'll never forget it. And we all got a yoga membership over there and we started doing yoga hardcore. And that was our excuse to be able to leave. And we would do yoga all day, every day. some girls would do it in the morning. We would go just to hang out at the gym. Then some of us would do it in the afternoon, and then they'd come to hang out with us. We were just always doing yoga. So it kind of became this thing where whether we liked it or not, it was our escape, right? And it got to a point where we really just looked forward to it. When I finally left, and I've got some really funny stories about those yoga classes. Wow. But when we finally left, I thought, one day I have to do India all over again. That was not a fair shot for me. I met a lot of really amazing people. I was there for several months, but it wasn't the way I wanted to do it. And so I didn't know how I was going to go back or why, or if it was going to be on a work visa or just, tourist visa. But life moved on, and I got a job, and my job was really intense. I worked for an international security consulting agency, and I was stationed overseas. So most of the time in Europe, Eastern Europe, Middle East, North Africa, and yoga again became my escape. So anytime I felt as if I was stressed out or I had a lot of anxiety or a jet lag, I was constantly traveling, I would pull out my mat and I'd be doing yoga classes with myself. I don't know. It became something that was bigger than me. And I loved being able to do yoga with other people, because a lot of those times in particular, I was stuck in my hotel room or in the place that I was being put up, and I was alone. So I was always doing yoga alone. I decided to quit that job, and because the one thing through all of these places and all these life circumstances that made me really happy was yoga, I was going to go off and do a yoga teacher training. So I took a break from the job and I went to Bali, because Bali to me was Hindu, and it was what I liked about being in India. And so it was absolutely gorgeous there.
Oh, I thought it was beautiful.
I mean,
what an amazing backdrop too.
I can't even explain to people when they're like, "Are you happy you did yoga outside the country?" I'm like, yes, I'm very happy. Bali, you can't even put it into words. And the culture, the people, the food, the smells, the landscape, the weather, I mean, it's everything. The list goes on forever. If I could move to one place, it would be Bali. But I did a yoga teacher training there, and it was bizarre because as much as I liked doing yoga, I wasn't used to all that hippity dippity stuff that people were doing, the chanting and the mantras and all that stuff. I just thought yoga was a bunch of poses to help you stay in shape. And wow, I was really far off. But I was glad that that was what got me into it. And I just kept saying to myself, if my parents could see me right now, they would be laughing so hard at me, sun gazing, staring at the sun, trying to get energy from like eating grass and doing days of silence. They'd be like, what is happening?
Do you feel that so this teacher training, or like this experience, like you're explaining in Bali, how do you feel like the teacher training broadened and deepened your knowledge and understanding of yoga? Because it was a lot more than what you thought it would be.
It just taught me different angles of it. I didn't realize that yoga had all these other limbs, right? The 8 limbs of yoga. But beyond that, I didn't realize that, yoga made me feel good. It helped center me. I never really thought of it as a tool that I could use to help others with what they were going through. And I realized the more I started talking about my experience and the people that I met, and just really everything surrounding that environment, how much it was, you could watch the switch go off in people's head. It was just like, maybe I need this. And
yeah, because yoga is like a moving meditation, right? And it just helps you connect with your breath and your body and calm down. And no matter what you do in life, everyone is so busy and everyone has their own stress and tension. And I think when people do finally come into a yoga practice, they realize how beneficial it can be in so many ways, right?
Absolutely. And, coming from New York, I think I was born a little bit wound up, a bit high strung, really fiery, and I'm Italian, so I talk with my hands a lot. And everything is just all over the place, right? Moving out to California, it helped kind of ground me a little bit more, right? Being on the beach, everybody's just so chill, and, things are just like a little bit more, I don't want to say lackadaisical, but lackadaisical.
Yeah.
And you start doing the yoga, and it really pulls a whole nother side of you out that you didn't know you had. And so I'm noticing maybe it is a Jekyll and Hyde situation. You know, I've got that personality that I was born with. And then I've got this whole other side that I now appreciate and didn't know existed until I started really diving deeper into yoga. And it's not the meditation, it's not the yoga practice in itself. It's not, you know, the whole, it's everything. It's the breath work. It's the way I now eat. It's the way I treat people. It's the way I think. It's everything. And, you know, if anybody, I've met a lot of people who have been on yoga teacher trainings who specifically went not to be a teacher, but to kind of change the direction of their lives because they weren't really sure what trajectory they were on. And hearing other people's stories was like, okay, well, maybe this is something that I could use for a month or two, maybe just as a reset, even just to understand a little bit more about my body or the way I think, right? Sitting down, taking a few weeks or months to yourself and listening rather than constantly being on the go and technology and all that other stuff. So, you know, I left there with a huge respect for yoga, but I still didn't plan on being a yoga teacher. I didn't leave there with the confidence after a couple months of training to be able to come back to Los Angeles and start teaching again. So I went back to my normal job. But again, it was my escape, always yoga. But because I was getting better at it, I was noticing I was able to take several hours out of the day to do different types of things for myself. Meditation in the morning, yoga practice in the afternoon, mindful eating. And then I decided, you know what, I'm quitting this job completely and I'm going back to India. And I went to Goa and I did my next teacher training, which was an Ashtanga 500. And I didn't know what Ashtanga was until I got there. I was like, man, I should have researched this a little bit more. I thought yoga's yoga. Well, I started Googling the second I started on those first courses where I could go to escape this yoga teacher training, expecting that. And the heat, luckily we were on the beach, but I mean the heat, and it was like right before monsoon season, I'll never forget. And there's like 100 people going through the teacher training and then 10 of us going through the 500. So it just seemed like we somehow got dragged into this torturous, I don't know why we did it, but I'm so happy that I graduated from that school because it changed my life completely. I think it worked in conjunction really well with the first teacher training. The first one was just kind of like an intro with a really nice backdrop being in Bali. And then the second one was like boot camp.
It's intense. This is
yeah.
You're here. It's very serious.
Yeah. And I mean, the sense of accomplishment that I had when I got out of there, I just wanted to teach everybody. I wanted to go on the beach and find strangers walking down, you know, Patnam Beach or Powell M and just be like, do you want to take a yoga class? Because I'm dying to teach you one.
I can teach you one right now.
I was making all kinds of random friends that were like, sure. So I started doing that and I did that for a couple of months. And then I moved back and I was ready to teach. I went straight into a studio format and realized quickly that most studios would prefer you teach different modalities of workouts. So not just yoga, not just Ashtanga, not just Vinyasa, not, you know, whatever. They want you to teach Pilates. They want you to teach TRX. They want you to teach cycling, all this other stuff. And I'm like, oh my God, well, this looks like another training is in the works. So yeah. I did do a Pilates training.
I'm going to ask you that, like, so after you, like, if people want to become a yoga teacher and after you finish your yoga teacher training, like, what is kind of the trajectory? Like, do you need to do a 200, then a 500, and then, like, are you just ready to teach after that? Or, like, what do studios, like, realistically, because, you know, you might go to India or Bali and do these teacher trainings, but then unless you choose to stay and live there, you're probably coming back to a city. And so what do they expect in a city like LA or New York or just, you know, any other place here in the States?
They don't expect much here in the States. They expect you to have at least a 200-hour training for yoga. If you're going to be teaching Pilates, 50 to 100 hours is good enough. That'll work, especially if you were a fitness teacher prior to that, because you pick up on a lot of the stuff and the anatomy of the body really quickly. But I would say for me, my experience, the best teachers I've ever had have a very diverse background. They have done trainings, whether they're all over the States or all over the world. They have different teachers, different types of yoga that they've gone into. Everybody's got something that they get excited about, right? For me, I thought living and breathing yoga for months at a time worked best for me. It was also cheaper. So to go over to Bali or India and have this really intense training and pay anywhere from $1,500 to $2,500 for room and board, food, your curriculum, a month to 2 months of training, and then still be living and breathing that environment when you're done was way more beneficial for me.
Yeah.
I think if I had done weekends on a Zoom class or in a studio for a couple hours during the day, I wouldn't have come out with as much confidence as I have now. But again, it still took years.
Yeah. Like it wasn't just overnight. Like you did one teacher training and then you're like, I'm ready. Like I think you had a background too and a connection with it that you felt through your own life experience that sort of also was grooming you to do this full time.
Absolutely.
For people that want to do teacher training, do you highly push or do you highly advise them to do it out of the States just because, as you said, like you think you can live and breathe that environment, or do you think just doing it through a studio is good enough too?
That depends. If you have the money and you don't have the time, do it here. Why not? You can find excellent teachers. I mean, California is just like a haven for yoga instructors, right? You can find excellent teachers. I mean, California is just like a haven for yoga instructors, right? The question is, have you done enough research though? Because a lot of these teachers hosting teacher trainings are not exactly the people that you would want to be getting your life lesson on yoga from, right?
Okay.
And you want to know that they've done their research, that they've put in their time. I think for me, personally, I like a range of different teachers. So I like people who are pushing from a totally different, angle. The teachers in India, they've been doing this their entire lives. It's not just postures to them, it's a lifestyle.
Exactly.
So learning that, and then, learning from an American in Bali, who's born and raised in Hawaii. He had a deep connection with the island, and I learned a lot from him spiritually, and he was just an incredible teacher, the way that he was spoken and the way he formatted his classes. I have met great teachers here in the States.
Yeah.
For me, I was never a student. I was never a good student. I can't sit in a classroom, or I couldn't sit in a classroom and really be focused, pay attention if I was starting to lose interest. And there were moments in some of these teacher trainings that I would lose interest, but I would quickly get it back because something crazy would happen that I wouldn't expect. And I'm in another country. So it's like, what is this? Yeah. And it's just part of the training. And you learn to deal with it. Here, I don't know that I would have been as disciplined.
And I feel like also the fact that you went there, like you're there for a purpose. Like you're like, I came thousands of miles because I'm here. So even if there are moments or things in class that are kind of difficult or disinterest you, at the end of the day, like you dropped everything in your life in the States and you went away to India to do something. So that's always going to be there in the back of your mind. And I'm curious, like when you first got to India, and I know you, as you mentioned, you were already there earlier, but when you got to India for the teacher training, was there specific things about the culture and the way of life there that were hard to adjust to, or maybe that were really shocking?
Not really, because the first time I went to India was Mumbai, and that was a complete culture shock, being there alone, and everything was really intense, right? And I felt like I couldn't do anything by myself. I didn't have that freedom.
Right.
So when I finally got used to that, I was okay, because that was just how it worked. If I wanted to get by there, I had to deal with it. When I went to Goa, I was on my own, but I was on my own terms. And I was there for a very specific reason. And I looked at it like I was putting myself through another version of college. And so I had to get through this stuff. And I just met people every minute of every day coming from all over the world that were either really excited to be there, or it was like a last straw for them. Like this was the one thing that they really needed in their lives to kind of put themselves into full gear or to help overcome something else. And we all really bonded. So immediately it was like I had a family. And even beyond my yoga school, the restaurants were incredible. The beaches were beautiful. The weather, yeah, it was humid, but I grew up in New York and the weather in the city was brutal too. So it's like, I highly recommend Goa. I absolutely loved it. I mean, I can't say enough good things about it. Things are tough. You get used to the fact that people say things are going to get done and they never get done. And you get a lot of the tomorrow. I learned so much on those trips to India, and I brought so much back with me. I even say now, I'm like, I can't wait to bring my husband there. I don't know how he would hold up.
Yeah.
But I think it'd be really funny to see him kind of flap around in some of these situations.
What do you think was the hardest thing to adjust to the first time you went to India? Like, was it just like the weather? Was it the culture? Like, what do you think one of the like?
Well, I did get really sick when I first got there. So that was like a good week. Oh, like you're just like paralyzed. Every doctor you've got on speed dial, like everyone's been to your house to visit at that point. You don't know any of them. Like you've got tuk-tuks taking you back and forth to doctor's appointment. Like that to me in the beginning was like, everyone kept saying it's not if it happens, it's when it happens.
You're gonna get jelly belly was what they call it. Like you're gonna get sick. It's just like different bacteria there, you know, in the water. And so it's like you need, and probably just like the food, even if you are eating something that's really bland, it's just different things over there, you know, so you gotta your stomach get used to it for a couple weeks.
Yeah, for sure. I'll never forget that. And I watched every one of the girls systematically go through it as well, you know, as they all started landing, everyone just starts getting sick after another. And it was just like, man, thank God we've got several bathrooms in this apartment.
Oh my gosh, I bet. It's like, that's definitely difficult. Did you find like, when you were doing yoga, was your experience, do you think it was harder because you were doing it like in India, or like just like to understand and to connect with everything? Or do you think that environment and that background enhanced the experience of doing the teacher?
Absolutely enhanced it, 100%. I would say, yeah, it's difficult. It was a different way of teaching. And, you know, the few times that I had done yoga in the past, I mean, I didn't have a huge background in it, but I had done yoga for a few years. It was just completely different. And it helped me appreciate more where other instructors are coming from. And now when I do yoga retreats, and I've got a lot of foreigners coming on these retreats because I host them in Portugal or Peru or Mexico or wherever, you've got people from all walks of life coming, and they're expecting something completely different as well. So to be able to kind of, you know, work my way around different ways of teaching, I now think is a big, strong suit for me. I wasn't disciplined in one specific way of teaching. I've got many teachers now that I can say all have brought a very unique practice into my life that I have adopted. And yeah, for me, India was just the best thing I could have ever done. It really was. And I am in love with the culture. I am. I've got now dozens of books that I need to be reading, and I figured over this quarantine I could be catching up on a lot of them too. But
do you like to go heavily into the more spiritual stuff, or do you like to keep it kind of light and fun?
I personally like to take spiritual classes. I like spiritual guides. I love that kind of stuff. I don't think that I am a good spiritual teacher yet. So for me as a teacher, I try to stay within that vinyasa flowy type of class. I get really creative with stuff like that. For me, there's an energy there that I can't duplicate in other types of practice. I teach all kinds of workouts and stuff, but it just always seems to be the vinyasa that I'm continually going back to. And it's not that I don't want to do Ashtanga. I love Ashtanga. It's just extremely disciplined.
Yeah.
And I like the creative side. I like that whole element of being able to kind of do as my body feels in that moment. And so that's what I like to teach. And I like to go around and ask people, what are you feeling today? How does your back feel? How are your shoulders? How's your neck, your leg, whatever. And then I'll formulate a class right on the spot, considering all of these different things that people are talking about and trying to address in that class. And for me, I would say that the vinyasa is able to address all of those in a 1 hour flow.
So since you've been teaching, because now primarily you teach full time, how has that changed your life? Like, are you just so happy that this is now something that you spend most of your time doing?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you had told me a few years ago that this is something I was going to be able to manifest and create out of nowhere, I would have probably said you were crazy. But I love the way that my life has found this direction, like out of nowhere. It came out of nowhere. And it was just all these circumstances that happened that led me to this path. And I couldn't be more thankful. Honestly, it was different before the pandemic because I was able to drive to clients' houses, and I'm doing all privates now. There's no studios at all. And I haven't been doing studios for a few years, but it was corporate classes, it's yoga retreats, it's private classes, it's beach classes, it's stuff like that. Where now it's Zoom and YouTube, and sometimes a few brands or something like that will do a live video on IG or Facebook. But other than that, I mean, I'm doing all of my classes in my living room. So I'm still thankful that I am able to work during this crazy time. I mean, I get to still get my workout in. I get to still feel really good, and then hopefully make other people's days from my house.
Yeah. Do you have like any specific advice for other people? Because I've heard a lot of even my own friends being like, I would love to quit my job and just become a yoga teacher. So do you have advice for people that might actually want to pursue a career in yoga? And like, what do you think the best steps to take are for that?
I would say get the most out of it. Get the most you possibly can out of your training. If you have, a couple $1,000 and you have a month that you're willing to just completely dive into this and become the best version of a yoga teacher, go to the source. Go to India, go to Goa, go to Rishikesh, go anywhere, Mysore. Take the course very seriously, because there are so many yoga instructors being pumped out everywhere right now that there needs to be something that's going to help you stand apart from everyone else. So if you have a very unique background or just something that people would just love to go and, take your class for, you're not going to find your identity as a yoga teacher right away.
Yeah, it's going to take some time.
I mean, being through the system here in California is only going to continue creating the same types of teachers, and it's going to cost you a lot of money. Mm-hmm. I would say, especially now, because of the whole worldwide situation, you most likely have a month that you can go and dive into this and then come out on the other side a way more enhanced version of a yoga practitioner, for sure. If anything, you just feel good. You feel better. You have a different outlook. So I would say for sure, try if you can, go to the source.
After someone trains, like how difficult is it to start teaching? Like say, I went to India or I went to Bali and I did a teacher training course and I came back to my city and I'm ready. Like, what does that look like? Like, was it hard to build clients at first? Is it hard to get into studios? Like, do you think trying to teach solo is better than trying to teach for a studio? Like, what are some of your
depends on personality, really. I mean, if you are somebody who's extremely confident and you come out of a 200-hour teacher training and you're like, I got this, then go for it. There's nothing stopping you, for sure. Me, I wasn't ready to go. Maybe it was because of my teacher. Maybe it was because of me. Maybe it was because I wasn't planning on being a yoga teacher at the end of that first training. But I think it takes a little bit more than one teacher training, honestly, before you can start telling other people what to do with their bodies and not have them get hurt. I would say put yourself through at least a 500. I know that that's going to take time, and it does take considerably, a bit more money. But again, if you go to the source, it shouldn't be that expensive. It should be fine. And yeah, I would say that's the way to go.
Being able to like stay there for months at a time and sort of live a simple life. Like, yeah, you have the beauty of the beaches and the things, but sort of, you know, you're disconnecting from this like busy Western world and like immersing yourself
That's
in.
exactly it though. It forces you to focus.
Yeah. And I think,
Forces you.
yeah, you have to, because you don't have any of those distractions, right? It's not
Yeah.
like, where are we going tonight? And blah, 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 like all this stuff, you know, the
Yeah.
things going on. It's like, it's just a simpler,
You are
quieter.
living and breathing your purpose in that moment for sure. And it doesn't
Yeah.
end until you come back. And even then you notice, wow, how many things I've taken for granted, you know, how many things are now at my fingertips. And then you just realize you don't need them. You know, you just start thinking a different way. You start teaching, approaching things in a totally different manner. And I can't explain it. It's just like, to me, it's just the best training for a human to go through.
People that maybe want to keep up with you and take your classes and just get involved with your YouTube or your retreats, where can they find all that information?
So my YouTube is just on my, you know, under my name. It's under, I think it's under Cara Provenzano.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what it's under. And then sometimes I use my like middle initials and stuff. But it's Cara Provenzano. And then my website is JediYogaWarrior.com. So I'll post on there about different retreats and updates. Right now we just had to reschedule one that was originally for July, then pushed to October, and now we're thinking May. So that'll be in Todos Santos, Mexico. I can't wait. Hopefully it still happens. And we've got a couple more lined up. Other than that, yeah, I mean, it's like my travel blog. It's where people can message me and ask about rates for classes. If they want to do a private one-on-one class, I'm happy to teach those with a mask. They don't have to wear a mask. I will be wearing a mask, hand sanitizer kind of stuff. Otherwise, Zoom classes up to 5 people, $50. So if you have 5 friends, it's $10 a person. If it's one of you, then it's $50. But yeah, an hour long.
Awesome. And I mean, I appreciate you sharing with me your experience and teacher training in India and just talking a little bit about getting into yoga and what it did for you. Because I think there's so many people that would love to do that. And this is such a great time to start thinking about it and doing it.
Thank you so much for even having me on. This is like the topic I want to talk about all day long. So it just gives me an outlet.
If you're interested in learning more about Cara's classes and her retreats, I've linked her website and her YouTube channel below. Thank you so much for watching this week. See you guys next time.